How's that? Look good? Oop,
Yep, giant X.
good. All right, give me just a second here. Cool, good to go. So I'm going to get started pretty quick. This is a 5-minute talk. I'm going to try to talk a little bit quick because I've got a lot of content actually. So title of this topic is what is editing and why do you need it? Except then I thought about that a little bit more and I was like, no, that's actually kind of backwards. This should be why do you need editing and what is it? Because that's the order in which I'm going to tackle this, but that's probably enough editing the title. So who's this targeted at? This is both for writers of original novels and for translation projects, but definitely more focused on the former than on the latter, just because of the nature of some of the work that you have to do. So why do writers need editors? So there's several problems here that you want to get help from an editor with. The first is bias. So writers are biased towards their own work, not in the sense that they think they're like really great at writing, but rather because the work is different for them than it is for everybody else. The idea is largely complete in their own minds, even if it isn't equally complete on paper. So as a writer, you know where the plot's supposed to go every step of the way. You know what each character is doing and thinking. You know how you want the reader to experience it. So when you try to read your own work, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everything goes according to plan. An editor isn't going to bring those same preconceptions. They're only going to find what's written in the words on the page, right? So then you can sit down with your editor and talk to them. What did the editor find there? What did you intend for them to find? And what do you both think you can do to make that better? Second problem is fatigue. So script fatigue is a very real problem, impacts everybody, not just writers. The problem here is that your brain's really good at what it does. So when you like read something and there's a word missing, your brain will just fill it in there for you. It's fine, no problem. You got a typo? Cool, I'll fix that for you. And the more times you read your script, the worse and worse the fatigue gets. Overcoming that fatigue is possible, but it takes some pretty extreme measures. So a couple of suggestions here if you need to edit your own work. First of all, let the script rest for a long time after you're done writing it. Like wait a month or so, then go back to it and you'll be a lot fresher. The other thing I've seen, if you're in a hurry and you need to edit your own script, you can try reading it out loud to yourself backwards. That's really slow and it'll only find certain classes of problems, but it's better than nothing. And similarly, like I said, this isn't just a problem for writers. This also applies to editors. So you don't want somebody who edited your script in some other capacity to be your copy editor later on because they're going to miss a lot of stuff. They're going to be fatigued just like you. Lastly, problem here, isolation. So if you're just writing in isolation, you're going to get a lot of ideas. Great. I'm not going to knock coming up with ideas for your own project. But just talking to another person can buy you a lot. And in fact, there's two benefits here. One is talking through problems to another person will force you to put them in logical order and help you solve your own problems. But the other thing is you want to talk to somebody who's experienced in the craft of writing. You want to talk to somebody like an editor or another writer so that you can bounce ideas off of each other and figure out where to go with a project. So that's kind of the why section of this talk. So let's talk about what is editing. So consistency is going to be one of the major running themes here. This is really what editing is all about, if you can only give it one word. Consistency is the main goal. So there's kind of three flavors of editing here. So developmental editing is at the top level, broadest, most one. This is the one you'll do very first in the process. So after you've got, say, a rough draft, then you'll move to developmental editing. After that, you can move down to line editing, and then lastly, once you've got a fairly polished draft, you do the copy editing to finish off the job. So let's dig into each of these. So developmental editing is about goals. It's fundamentally about your ideas. What do you want to do with the game that you're writing, right? So first you need to understand what your goals are. You need to set your goals. You need to check in the finished product whether you've actually met your goals. And of course, a good developmental editor is going to give you suggestions about how to better meet your goals. This is definitely something you need to invest in for an original project. If you're talking about translation projects, developmental editing is kind of unimportant. Obviously, that should have been done for the original project. Line editing, on the other hand, is much more important for translation projects and is kind of done by the writer usually for an original project. But it's the most important part for a translation project. Line editing is about the flow of the text. So it's about logical consistency. It's about the punch and the rhythm. It's about the readability of your text. And like the logical consistency, what I mean is, does one event logically follow the next? So, got that backwards. Do the events follow in sequence, right? So in terms of readability, is it concise rather than verbose? Is it precise rather than unintentionally ambiguous? Is the characterization proper? Is the tone proper at each point? And also plot holes. Like, so if you find that something is claims to have been happening and then it didn't actually happen in the past, you should probably fix that. And a line editor will catch that sort of problem. Lastly, copy editing. Copy editing is for correctness. Don't skimp on copy editing. Everybody needs copy editing. For the love of God, please, please get a copy editor. You know what this is, but just to give a brief list, I'm talking about misspellings, dropped words, grammatical errors, typographic consistency, and so forth. Your copy editor should have and use a style guide. They should be applying it rigorously. You need a copy editor, please get a copy editor. If you don't have one, I guarantee you're going to make mistakes. If you have to edit your own, again, this is the fatigue problem. You want to let it rest for a long time and come back to it, or at the very worst, do that read it backwards out loud. And that's it. We're done. Questions, comments, problems?
Amazing. Yeah, and so we have 5 minutes for questions. They're all 5-minute periods, all the same. So yeah, go at it, guys. Suggestions for recruiting editors, someone asked.
That's a tough one. I don't know about editors that specialize in original projects. So like you'll find a lot of editors for translation projects, but they're going to have a different skill set entirely. And I don't have much experience, honestly, in the original, the area of original visual novels.
Mm-hmm.
I would honestly look at the same people that are advertising that they do manuscript editing, like novel editing, and try to hire someone like that to look at your script. Those people are as hungry for work as anybody. What else we got?
What are your thoughts on beta readers?
Beta readers, so it's valuable for sure. You should definitely have them, and that's especially helpful for more like developmental editing, right? So for the early phases of your draft, you should definitely use that. You still probably want a developmental editor because they're going to give you usually more insightful comments. They're going to have more writerly suggestions, right? So if you have problems where, oh, this character isn't likable enough early in the story and you clearly intended them to be likable, they're going to be able to tell you something really specific like that. Or this chapter is too long, you just need to shorten this chapter, or you need a whole chapter about this topic that you didn't cover. That sort of thing you're going to get from a developmental editor. Usually a beta reader is not going to be quite as thorough. I see this good one. At what point of the visual novel development should an editor be hired? That's a good question, and it's different for all three of those. So you want a developmental editor pretty early on. So as soon as you've got like an early draft, you should start engaging with a developmental editor to get some guidance. Copy editing, very last thing you should do. Yeah, because that's fixing the errors, and you don't want to have to go fix little typos and grammatical errors and whatnot. What would you pay a copy editor? I have no idea. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a question that it's up to you and that specific person. Rates will vary all over the place. All right, we have 2 minutes left, so we can field one last question if there is any. I don't think I think any tips on organizing script transfers between editors and writers?
So personally, I do a lot of back and forth. So when we're doing like a translation project, especially, the translators usually look over the edited text and say what they think about that, and then we go back and forth on some topics. We actually have like a shared tool that we can both work in. So you can just, if you're using Git, for instance, it's very easy to go and look at the changes somebody made. So we just directly make changes and then go review each other's changes afterwards.
Cool. In my experience, you have to go back and forth anyway. All right, so time's about up. So